guys, it's Counting my review for... And what Venom is essentially about is we center on the character of Eddie Brock. He is this reporter, essentially, and there is this symbiote that basically it's being used to host different humans, and eventually it gets a hold of Eddie Brock, and this basically changes his life, and that's really all I can say, honestly. So, Venom overall, I was very conflicted with this film. On one hand, I should be really excited for it. It has Tom Hardy, it was going to be an R-rated Venom, and it seemed like all the chips were really in play. But as the, as the, trailers and things like that started to come out, the hype really started to die down very slowly, to the point where not only was I dreading this movie, but I just didn't care about it. It was just a movie that was coming out, and I was gonna see it, and it sucks. It's as bad as everyone has said. Venom is truly an awful film that is a terrible excuse for a superhero film. It's easily one of the laziest I've seen in a very long time, but we're just getting to right now, starting off with the cast. And like I said, going into Venom, that was one of the things I was most excited for, and I will say, Tom Hardy does not let me down. I did think he did a good job in this film. He does bring a lot of charisma to the role of Eddie Brock. Even when the role isn't working, Hardy does still find a way to, find the fun, find the charm there. He's a very likable guy in that sense, and I did like what he did here, and by far the best thing about this movie is him playing both Eddie Brock and Venom. He's able to get that menacing side of Venom out, and I think he definitely did do a good job in this film, and I did like him here. Unfortunately, the same can't be said for the rest of the cast, especially Michelle Williams, who I thought was pretty bad here, honestly. Usually, I'm a really big fan of her, and I think she can do, even with very little performance, like The Greatest Showman, for example, she still did do a lot in that film. Here, on the other hand, Williams recently put out an article that said that she basically just did the movie for hard-earned cash, and you can definitely tell, because not only does she feel so bland and so uninterested in this role, but she's really only here because, she's the love interest for Eddie, and they break up very early on in the film, and she's there so Eddie can find a way to prove to her that they can be together again, and that's really all she does here. It's one of the weakest female roles I have seen in the longest time. I can't believe that this is really all she amounts to in the film, but it really is just a reactionary role. She doesn't have any sort of arc in the film. There's nothing that happens to her as a character. She really has nothing to work with, so while I don't necessarily want to fault Williams, her work does not at all try to, her work does not elevate the character. So, no, I cannot say that Williams did a good job here solely for that reason. Easily the worst performance I've seen from her, and same with Riz Ahmed. These are two people who are in fact very talented, but their talents are just completely wasted here. Riz Ahmed is just the very stereotypical, cartoony villain who is just like an Elon Musk sort of type, who we're seeing in all these various films, and it's not any better here. There's not a single moment in the film where you're intimidated by this guy. He's not really menacing. He doesn't give you that evil vibe that he's eventually going to turn into. Once he does get there, it comes so far out of left field, and really the entire cast of this movie is either they're just going through the motions or they're straight up bad. It's really only Hardy that does bring something to this film, and that's really all I can say in terms of acting. But now I really want to get to the directing and the writing, because holy shit, where do we begin? I mean, this film is a colossal failure in virtually every department when it comes to directing and writing. And directing especially, I mean, this film cannot decide what it wants to be. Is this trying to be a very dark, gothic film that takes itself seriously? Or is it trying to be more of a B-movie, something in the vein of, say, something something in the vein of, say, you know, earlier superhero movies that came out in, like, the early 2000s. Like, what is this movie really trying to be? It doesn't really have a firm grasp on that, and that's the thing that I think really is a detriment to this film, is that it does not have any sort of idea of what it really wants to be. And because of that, the tones are very much clashing here. Anytime the film wants to be funny, sometimes it works, and most of the time it's because of Hardy's delivery. When it doesn't work, it falls incredibly flat, and you're just like, how did this joke happen? It's so forceful, and I really couldn't stand a lot of the humor in this movie. And then when the film tries to get dramatic, it doesn't work either, because you don't really feel like you've gone anywhere with these characters. And the fact that, again, the movie just does not have an idea of what it really wants to be. And it just doesn't really bog down to that one idea. And I think that really does hurt the film overall. But the writing as well of this film is just a huge mess on pretty much every level, especially when it comes to the characters, which most of them, there's nothing here. I mean, again, as much as Tom Hardy really does try, there's really nothing to the character of Eddie Brock either. He is simply just what Venom refers to him as in the film, a loser who's a reporter and drives a motorcycle. That's really all there is to this guy. He kind of is a bumbling idiot at points, and there really is nothing to him as a character, and I really did not understand, what sort of arc he needed to go through. But the film clearly thinks that it needs to establish these characters, that these characters are the most complex human beings out there, because it takes virtually, like, an hour for this film for anything of interest to really start to happen. It's not till about 58 minutes in when the Venom stuff actually starts to become a major plot point. Before then, it's just a lot of setup, and it's not interesting setup. The film has not one, but two time jumps, and neither one of them feel impactful, neither one of them feel necessary, and you forget about most of what happened way after, basically once it's done. Like, once it's done, you pretty much forget what happened, and again, it's just because of the fact that there just isn't anything interesting. And honestly, I was extremely bored with the first, hour or so of this movie. It was very sluggish. It was very hard to get through. And, I was going to come on here and say this is one of the most boring things I've seen all year, because, again, it's just a lot of meandering, a lot of repetitive conversations here and there. They try to get you invested in this relationship, but you just don't care. Not only do Hardy and Williams, they have no chemistry whatsoever. It's completely devoid of chemistry, but we don't have any reason to care for Eddie and Anne. They don't give you any sort of struggle that they're dealing with. They just kind of throw you into this relationship, and again, they don't give you anything to really work with here, and I think, again, that really does hurt this film overall for me. I was very disappointed with their relationship, because, again, I was hoping that I could at least enjoy their characters, and I really didn't, to be honest. If it wasn't for Hardy's acting ability, I wouldn't even like the Eddie Brock character all that much, because, again, there's not much to him, and same with the villain. The villain, especially here, is so one-dimensional. He's just a guy who, he wants symbiotes to fix the problem in the world, and he thinks that symbiotes could be the answer to, ongoing problems and things like that. And it's not interesting. It's really boring, and there's so many things that are like that in this film. And again, there's a lot of things with the film that take itself very seriously. And then you have things like the bistro scene, which you guys have heard of that bistro scene. And yeah, it is unwatchable. It is absolutely one of the worst things you will see all year. And I truly can't believe that we go from something. I truly can't believe that the same movie has a bistro scene that also has, some of the other really dark scenes in this movie. It's so wildly uneven. It's honestly kind of hard to talk about at points. It's really not till, like I said, an hour into this movie when things actually started to get interesting for me, and that's mainly because of Venom. The dynamic between these two is really the only thing I think this movie actually does get correct. I really did like the back and forth between them. Venom is someone who you can tell he's very much tempting Eddie, and he's trying to get Eddie to do a lot of dark things, and you think, okay, Eddie's really going to go there, but then he doesn't. He's very restrained. He doesn't want to do anything that's, anything that's malicious. He doesn't want to do anything that might hurt others. He's very adamant about the whole, these are the bad people, these are the good people. And the problem is, that's just not the Eddie Brock character. That's not the direction he's supposed to go into, and it really does not feel right for this film. And again, it's unfortunate because when Venom and Eddie are working together, the movie is infinitely better, and it's mainly because the film knows exactly what to do with the Venom character. They have a lot of fun there, and I really loved what they do with them, but everything else just feels so stale and so underwritten, and it's mainly because of Spider-Man. I hate to say the film needs Spider-Man, because I do think this film could have worked if you didn't have Spider-Man in there. You could have told sort of like a, origin story of Eddie Brock becoming this villain, but that's not the story they're telling here. The story they're telling here, I don't know what they're trying to tell here. The reason why I struggle to tell you the plot is because I don't really know what this movie is about. I don't really know what they're trying to do here. The film overall, it feels like nothing. It feels so uneventful, and honestly, I think it's way worse for a superhero movie to be uneventful than to be something like, say, Fantastic Four or Catwoman or Batman and Robin, where we constantly are harkening back to it. Why? Because the film is still getting recognition. Admittedly, it's receiving, negative recognition, but, it's still out there. People still know about this movie. They still hold it to a certain standard. Venom, on the other hand, is not like that for me. Venom is the most disposable superhero film you could make possible, and there are so many things in this movie that they could have dived into more. And knowing that 40 minutes or so was cut out, you really do feel it. I'm not going to get into the editing just yet, but overall, the film just feels extremely underwritten. It feels like there's so much more that could have happened in this film, but it just doesn't. A lot of it just feels like it's that movie that Sony clearly made because they want to keep the rights to the Spider-Man properties that they still have, so they can eventually make that Sinister Six movie that we all want, except they don't do anything interesting with this character except for the Venom and Eddie dynamic, which even that isn't that interesting. It's not, they don't really do anything that exciting with it, and I think that's really what this film is missing. I will say, cinematography-wise, this film does look good. There are some scenes that did look very good here. The film did have a good style to it. CGI, no. The CGI here is really bad. One shot in particular with Eddie where I'm just like, how did this get passed? How did this get approved? I was honestly baffled that someone actually looked at that and be like, oh yeah, that's okay. Oh yeah, let's put that in the movie. Like, I really could not believe that they actually approved of this shot, but somehow they did. I don't know how, but they somehow got it into the movie. It's horrendous, and it absolutely shouldn't be there, but somehow it's in the movie. I really don't understand it at all, but the score as well here is very bland. There's really not much to it at all. Of course, there is that horrendous Venom song, which, is really dumb. But apart from that, just the score in general, I really could not stand. Not that I hate it. Like, I didn't hate the score or anything, but it just was very whatever to me. And the editing, like I said, this film is extremely choppy, and you can really tell that there are 40 minutes or so missing. There are so many points in this movie where it feels like scenes are missing. There are so many things where it feels like we could have got more development. For example, there is this recurring character that is just this little girl, and you keep seeing her, like, creeping out from scenes. Like, she'll just randomly show up, and you're like, what is the point of this little girl? And what she eventually amounts to is honestly laughable how much screen time she actually gets in this film, and then you see in context what she actually does. And to me, again, it's one of those things where I am sure the original cut had more to do with this little girl. I'm sure this little girl had a much more integral role in the film. I'm hoping, at least, because I don't know why the hell she's here other than that. But yeah, they keep cutting back to her, and there's really no reason to do it whatsoever. I really do feel bad for Tom Hardy, because clearly he did put a lot of passion into this film, but most of the stuff that he really wanted the film did not turn out to be. And again, you really do feel that here. The third act in particular feels so rushed. There are so many things that are glossed over. There are so many things that they could have spent more time on, and they just unfortunately don't. And the action scenes here are very underwhelming. There's really not a single action scene in this movie movie that I can tell you, oh, that's a memorable scene. Oh, that's a well-done scene. There's one motorcycle chase especially that literally feels like the same shot over and over again. It's mainly because they keep cutting from the back. It's very similar to Star Wars The Phantom Menace with the pod race, where they turn the pod a certain way so it seems like the same shot's always going left to right. There's a very similar motorcycle chase scene in Venom that is just like that, and you guys are just gonna have to see it to believe it. It is truly so unremarkable and so ridiculously cut, and I can't believe how this actually happened in a superhero movie from 2018. Honestly, Venom is everything that superhero movies should try to avoid. It's a movie that you think that we are above. It's a movie that, you know, years ago, sure, people have been like, okay, they're still trying to figure out the kinks of everything, but we are way past this. We have evolved, you know, superhero movies have evolved much more since then. Look at Infinity War, look at Incredibles 2, look at countless other examples that I can give you, and this just sets it back so much, and I can't believe that so much time was spent on this movie, and people have, you know, they've been clamoring for a Venom movie for years now, and this is the final product. This is what we end up getting, and I guess fans are okay with that since people are flocking the theater, you know, flocking their theaters to see it, and it's making tons of money, so I'm guessing we're going to get that Venom 2, but I'm honestly not that on board. I like the dynamic between Eddie and Venom, but other than that, there's really not much to recommend here. Also, I will say, the post-credit scene in this movie is one of the dumbest post-credit scenes I have seen in the longest time, and especially the scene after that. The scene after that, I'm sure you guys know, it's literally just a 5-minute preview for Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. I really wish I was joking. Like, why is that in the movie? Why is that here? I don't know. To me, it just seems like Sony was just like, oh, let's just get to the next thing. Nobody cares about this. And again, Venom is just one of those movies where, in general, you just question everything, but especially you're questioning why it was even made, because, again, they don't spend enough time on the Eddie Brock character. They don't give you enough to latch onto with his character. All the other characters are extremely one-note. There's really nothing memorable going on, and you just kind of sit there and wonder, why did they even make this movie? All right, so Sony can keep the rights to the Spider-Man properties they already have for now, and yeah, I say for now because Marvel is absolutely going to be getting a hold of these at some point. I mean, just the fact that this turned out so bad, I think especially Marvel is going to get the rights to this. I don't think this movie is as bad as everyone has been saying, but it still is a terrible film. It still is something that I don't recommend any of you to see. It is basically as disposable of a superhero film as I think you can get, and I am unfortunately going to give Venom a D+. Look, I never really had the highest hopes for this movie, but I was really hoping that it could surprise me. I was really hoping that it could be at least somewhat decent, and the fact that this is what they get out of it, it just makes me really upset. And again, especially Sony, like, I don't know what you're doing, Sony, but it's maybe time to throw in the towel. Like, after this, I really don't think you guys know what you're doing with superhero movies. Just stop making superhero movies. You don't know what you're doing. Just stay away from them because it's clearly not suited for you. But either way, guys, in my review of Venom, let me know what you guys saw of this movie overall, left your thoughts, and we'll see you guys in my next video, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.
They're gonna hate, but I don't care. I barely can wait to hit him with the snare and the bass square in the face. This off my wall, better prepare to get laced because they're gonna taste my venom. I got that adrenaline.